Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Grand Champion Tournament. Is this video you're watching right now coming out extraordinarily late for when I wanted it to be up? Absolutely. Is the next one going to be this late? No, I'm basically going to be recording this one and the next one more or less back to back just to get on top of it. But hello, this is sort of our official video for the first heat of the first round of the Grand Champion Tournament, which is, if this is the first time anyone's hearing about this and you haven't seen our teaser, our trailer, all that stuff, essentially, the D-pad's been around for about 15 years, and we have played over 1,000 video games in one degree or another over that time. I think, as of right now, the number is like somewhere in the ballpark of like 1,045, maybe 1,050. There's a handful of games that haven't gone up onto the channel yet, but I'm accounting for them up here. So what we're doing is we have a series of bracket-based tournaments on challenge.com. Today, I'm going to walk you through the very first set of matchups that you can vote on right now at challenge.com/grand_champion1. Excuse me, champion_1. Now, each of these rounds and heats and things are going to be open for several weeks. This one's actually been open for the past 2 weeks, and it actually closes tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. So less than 24 hours from now, it will be closed for the first set of matchups. The first 64 matches will be clear, and then we'll be going into the second heat, which is at the same URL. It's the second half of that first sort of entry-level set of stuff. And you can currently vote on all 128 that are in round one, but it's probably, you don't need to for those. Essentially, the match you want to look for, because for some reason the voting things are done up in reverse order on the website. I don't know why. The first 64 matches on the bracket will be, I think the last one is Mega Man 4 for the Game Boy, so IV, Roman numerals, versus Sonic Boom, The Rise of Lyric. That is the first match that you would need to vote for, and then everything to the right and below that will be your matchups for this heat. So what this video is going to do is going to introduce you to your competitors for this particular round, let you know what is up, what's up against what, and just a quick reminder to folks about some of these, because, I would be surprised if almost anybody has seen every series we've done. So this gives you a chance to at least get a little like, oh, right, that. And also, each of the remaining rounds that have 64 matches in them, which goes until quite late into this process, are all going to be 3 weeks long. So you will have more time to be able to vote on these as we go. There's also one other really interesting note here that probably doesn't matter to anyone but me. So the ordering of a seeded tournament is done in a very deterministic way, such that essentially the number one seed, if they win every single match in, let's say, a 64 team tournament, and let's say that in every situation the highest seed wins. So the first match in a 64-up tournament, number one would be up against number 64. Then the next match, number one would be up against number 32. And then the next one, number one, would be up against 16, 1 versus 8, 1 versus 4, 1 versus 2. The reason I bring this up is because that means that the match that comes after 1 versus 64 would not be 2 versus 63. It would be 32 versus 33. So that the winner of that, which has essentially a nominative seed of 32, would go up against the equivalent for number one. Doesn't really matter. The point being, because we split this into 4 brackets, I realized a little too late that we're not quite perfect on that front, because each of the 4 brackets is 256 of the teams, essentially the first 128 and the last 128, and then the second one is the second 128 and the second to last 128, which means that so the middlemost pair, essentially after the first seed and the 10/24th seed, the next match below that would, in a correctly organized tournament, be seed 512 versus 513. But because of the way we broke this out, it doesn't really do it like that. And there's not a very easy way of doing that without sort of building the entire thing and then going, okay, I need these two specifically, then these two specifically. So it would have exponentially increased how long this thing took to set up. So it's not a perfect bracket in that regard, but it's pretty close. So anyway, that all said, let's get into our matchups. So for the first heat of round one, like I said, there are 64 matchups. We have 128 games that we are taking a look at. And the idea for the voting is not which is the best game, but which game have we covered the best, which has made your favorite videos, your favorite series, your favorite jokes, your favorite memes, any of that stuff. Technically, I mean, you could vote for however you wanted to vote for these, but that's kind of the idea, is which one we've kind of done up the best. So the very first matchup we have is our 1 seed and our 1024 seed, which is Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis and Gen War, a Sega Saturn game that we played as part of Saturn Return. Sonic 1 is a game that we played many, many times. We played it for Sonic Week. We had a D-pad rivals race of Sonic 1. I think it was me versus CJ. We had the Supersonic Let's Play in 2016. We had the Sega Genesis Mini in the late 2010s, and then we had Sonic Weekathon in 2021. So we covered this 5 times over the course of our first 10 years plus a couple days. We haven't covered it since. We haven't done it in the 5 years since, but we have covered it a lot. Meanwhile, Gen War was a Sega Saturn game, like I said, for the Saturn Return series. It was the one that was sort of like Mech Warrior with FMV cutscenes, kind of a sci-fi shoot 'em up kind of situation there. So that's our first matchup of 64 for this. I think most of the rest of these descriptions will be a little bit shorter for the games we haven't played quite so many times. Our second matchup is Five Nights at Freddy's 4 versus Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 we played as part of the Fright Before Christmas back in, I think, 2015, 2016. And Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball was one that we included as part of, I believe, Punch Dave Hook's Money as part of the 13th anniversary marathon stream, the D-pad Re-13. So a pretty different set of games for that one. Five Nights at Freddy's 4, we only played 1 episode of before we kind of were like, I think we're done here, in terms of just the intensity of the jump scares. And Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, I think we played twice as part of Dave's quiz show / fighting game crossover thing that he was doing for that stream. Next up after that, we have The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, so the 3DS port of Ocarina of Time, facing off against Heretic and Hexen. So Ocarina of Time 3D, like I said, this is the 3DS port. We played this. It was fairly new at the time. We had just finished off the main Legendary Let's Play. We had wrapped up all the core titles that were released at the time, and we decided we were going to cover Ocarina 3D because aside from just being interested in it, we had heard that Majora's Mask was getting we had heard the rumor that Majora's Mask was also getting a 3DS port, and we figured we would cover that in anticipation of that, and then it came out much earlier than anybody expected. But so yeah, the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time. And then on the Heretic and Hexen side, so that is the newer, I think 2025, they re-released essentially Heretic and Hexen for PC. And with it, they also included some new episodes for both. And those new episodes are Heretic, Faith Renewed, and Hexen, Vestiges of Grandeur. So those are new episodes with new maps for both of the two games. And the way that we kind of wound up dividing up how games worked on this, we included those as sort of the packed together Heretic and Hexen. So those were recently done by CJ as part of the 90 Minute Nails Let's Rip and Tear series. Kind of between Heretic and Hexen, and then following up the main campaign for Hexen as well. After that, we have Mega Man for the NES versus Mario Kart DS. So for Mega Man, that was as part of the Mega Let's Play, the very first game for there, which I think after our first recording session, we realized that we had the footage in 30 frames a second instead of 60. So after starting from episode 6 onward, it's 60 frames a second and nice and buttery smooth. Mario Kart DS was played as part of Mario Party Madness and that kind of extended universe of stuff. Part of the lead up to Mario Kart World, we decided to get everybody together for some Mario Kart DS online. And so I think it was either a 7 or 8 player experience. It might have actually been more. It might have been more like 12. I don't remember how many we had there, but it was a pretty big multiplayer stream. After that, we have Fist of Awesome versus Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Fist of Awesome was a game we played on the Ouya as part of the 12 Games of Christmas way back in 2014. This was the original 12-game Ouya series, not to be confused with Ouya Oh No, which we did much later on, I think like 2018-ish, something like that. And Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is one that we're currently playing. It was one of the games we played as part of the grand finale, the other 1,000-game celebration series. We did one extended, like, hour-long episode for that, and then we've been following that up with standard 15-ish minute Let's Play episodes since then. So that game is still in progress right now, but it's in here. It was one of the first 1024. So those two are up against each other. After that, we have Mega Man The Wily Wars versus Affordable Space Adventures. So The Wily Wars was a game we played originally as part of the Mega Let's Play. This is the one that's on the Genesis that has essentially Genesis ports of 1, 2, and 3, and then a final, I think, Wily Tower segment that kind of combines... I think you can choose weapons from all 3 games to kind of load out Mega Man, and you face off against 3 new bosses on your way up the tower. We also played it as part of the Sega Genesis Mini. I believe for that one we had kind of a quick breeze through of it because we'd already played it in full. Affordable Space Adventures we played pretty recently back in 2024 as part of the Ultimate Wii U. This was the game where you are kind of I was going to say asynchronously. That's not really right. Asymmetrically, I guess, control a ship that is stranded on a planet that is full of debris and stuff. And essentially, everyone playing controls different things. So you have one person with the gamepad who I think is doing the basic piloting. But then I want to say you can have up to, I think, 3 players. One controls like flashlights, one controls weapons, and I think one controls flight. So interesting little game. It is no longer obtainable in any way, as far as I'm aware, through legal means, because it was a Wii U exclusive, as was everything on the Ultimate Wii U. And now I think it was an eShop only download. So, and the Wii U eShop is closed. So sadly, no way to get the hold of this game. We do have it, but it's not obtainable anymore. After that, we have Chronoblade versus Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So Chronoblade is another one of the 12 games of Christmas games that we did for the Ouya back in the day. That one, if I recall correctly, was a kind of a, I don't want to say MOBA because that's not really right, but sort of a Diablo-like experience of just kind of overhead and you're walking around and you're, sword and sorcery type stuff. For the Ouya, which it being on the Ouya obviously meant the controls were not particularly amazing. And then Symphony of the Night, a game that really doesn't need any introduction, but we played that as part of the grand finale also. That was one that we played specifically because like John and CJ and Ben had been, wanting to do Symphony of the Night for ages, and it felt right to kind of bring it up for the grand finale. As of right now, we've only got the one episode we made for the original grand finale. We haven't expanded on it yet, but there are plans to. But right now, there's only the one. So both of these games have exactly one video to compare them to. So this should be a pretty easy one to sit down and look at them. After that, we have Super Mario Maker, the original one, and Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, the Wii U title. Super Mario Maker was one that we had done as kind of a series when it was fairly new, I think. It wasn't like brand new, I don't recall, but it was, newish. Just us essentially doing a string of player-created levels and just getting through as many of them as we could. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash is a part of the Ultimate Wii U. It's a Wii U exclusive. Entry in the Mario Tennis series and just kind of exploring that for a while and seeing what the game had to offer. I think that one was just me and Sarah for that particular episode. So yeah, both of those pretty straightforward, like spin-offy Mario type fare on, the Wii and Wii U platforms. I think Mario Maker was original Wii. I don't think it was Wii U. I don't remember. Might have been Wii U. I don't know. After this, we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past versus NHL All-Star Hockey. So this is probably the time to drop the important mention that, generally speaking, we have counted our randomizers as different entries on the list compared to the original, mostly because it is a very different gameplay experience. And it just kind of doesn't make a ton of sense to put the two of those together if you're not really doing the same things exactly between them. So this is just for classic non-randomized A Link to the Past, which is Super Nintendo game, very early in the console's life. We played it the first Saturday, I believe, of the Legendary Let's Play back in August of 2013. It might have been like September 1st or something. And we also played it briefly as part of the Super NES Classic Edition a few years later. NHL All-Star Hockey is a Sega Saturn game. We played it as part of Saturn Return, which, it's kind of all in the name. It's a hockey game for the Sega Saturn. So not a ton to talk about in that regard. And that one was also a single video. So the Super NES Classic Edition would have been one video of A Link to the Past. Saturn Return, outside of Virtual Hide was one video for all of those as well. So one video for each of those, and the original Link to the Past Let's Play. Next up, we have another Zelda title. It is The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes for the 3DS, as well as Mario Party DS. So Triforce Heroes was a game that we played when it was essentially brand new for the 3DS. I want to say that came out after both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D. So we were playing that when that one was new. There might have been a Hyrule Warriors definitive edition might have come out vaguely after that too. I'm trying to remember, but this was during kind of the slow post Legendary Let's Play period before we brought it back for like Breath of the Wild and all of those. Meanwhile, Mario Party DS is one that we played as part of Mario Party Madness. That was a normal way to say that too, actually. We've done a couple of these. I think there's been 3 overall, and I've been present for 2 of them. Clark experimenting with multiplayer DS games over Parsec, and yeah, we had a pair of 4-player Mario Party DS games, which mostly went fine. The first one, we were kind of working out some of the kinks. We realized we had kind of a desynced set of games, so it was starting to act up a little bit, but the second time around was a lot better, and I think we literally only had a problem at the very end of the game that we couldn't resolve, but it's been an interesting kind of progression of those. So nowadays, DS games are a little easier to do as part of that, so that's where we get Mario Kart DS. We're planning other DS-based games at some point in the future as well, so that is that. After this, we have Pokemon Heart Gold version versus Battle Monsters, which is, I think, kind of a neat little pairing there of our Pocket Monsters and our Battle Monsters. Heart Gold is one that got played, I think, by Felice as part, or is it CJ? One of the two. It was Felice. So Felice played Heart Gold and did sort of a video of them going through and beating the Elite Four. And in the time since then, I have started a run of Heart Gold as part of our Padlock, myself and John. He's playing Soul Silver, I'm playing Heart Gold. And we've been doing this for about a year and a half now, because of a lot of hiatuses. I have survived through Whitney, so I'm a lot less nervous about where everything else is going to go. The other game we have is Battle Monsters. That is a fighting game for the Sega Saturn. We did it as part of Saturn Return. And it was interesting to kind of see what fighting game, anytime we do these little micro series, little console plays, it's interesting to see what fighting games turn up for those. So more straightforward fighting game versus our RPG in the form of Pokemon Heart Gold. Following that, we have Duke Nukem 64 versus Wii Fit U. It's a really interesting combination for that one. So Duke Nukem 64 was part of the early days of 90 Minute Nails. That was, I think, the second one that we had done. It's where I think our joke about like Lucas Dukas came from and all of that. And on the other hand, we have Wii Fit U, which we did as part of the Ultimate Wii U. Got to check out the balance board games that were on display there, as well as some of the newer ones that were added for the Wii U version, because there was Wii Fit and Wii Fit Plus before that. Kind of a blurry line on that one, whether it was actually properly a unique non-ported title for the Wii U, but it gets so fuzzy with the Wii U that it's honestly kind of hard to delineate what counts and what doesn't. There's probably a couple games that were in that playlist that didn't need to be based off of the parameters we set, but we did play it. So after this, we have The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time versus Casino Kid. So I should mention as well, for the Ocarina of Time 3D that we already talked about, that was us playing the Master Quest version of the game because the 3DS had both of them included for that. We figured it would spice it up a little bit. The Ocarina of Time, the original N64 one we did as part of the Legendary Let's Play, we've only ever done it once in terms of vanilla. And so it was just the one time. It was the first Sunday of the Legendary Let's Play in 2013. I think that was September 1st. So we've only covered it once, many years ago. Sorry, the heating kicked on and I didn't want to completely destroy the audio for this video, so we're back. Casino Kid for the Cursed Casino series that we did for Extra Life for 2025. This was an NES game that I grew up with. You play blackjack and poker in a casino setting, but it's done up as sort of a like almost RPG type visual aesthetic. It's a very interesting sort of look for a game where you're ultimately playing cards the entire time. So Ocarina of Time for the N64 versus Casino Kid for the NES. After that, we have Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon versus Mary-Kate and Ashley Sweet 16 License to Drive. Yes, that is real. Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon is a Mystery Dungeon game that we played briefly back in 2015. Then I picked it up again in 2024 and have been sort of spottily trying to keep that one going to get through the whole of the game. The other one is a driving themed board game starring Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen that we played as part of a Mario Party Madness sort of spin-off thing where we were actively trying to find bad party games to play. It's an interesting one because like the mini games are actually okay, other than the fact that they go forever. They're all extremely long mini games, so it does take quite a while to get through an actual game of License to Drive. After that, we have Pokemon Soul Silver version versus the Jackbox Party Pack 11. So Pokemon Soul Silver is one that CJ played for the same CJ and Felice versus the Elite Four series, where he wound up going up against the Elite Four and Soul Silver as kind of, I think it was 5 videos, it might have been 4, but 4 or 5 videos as sort of a brief series there. And John has started playing Soul Silver as part of our padlock, like mentioned before. The Jackbox Party Pack 11 is this past year's Jackbox Party Pack. It is one that we played 3 times as part of our Patreon hangouts. 3, not in a row, because I think we skipped December, but we did it as kind of our community night event several times there over the course of the fall and winter. That's the one that includes, so we didn't play Suspectives. It's a social deduction game. I'm not a big fan of those generally, and it's really hard to do those through like streaming anyway. It also has Hearsay, which is the one where you talk into the mic to make sounds or words if you're allowed to various prompts, and people vote to decide which one fits the best or the funniest or whatever. There's Cookie House, the art game for this pack, where you are decorating cookies to match certain criteria. Legends of Trivia, which is a trivia RPG, I guess is probably the best way to describe that one. It's actually a surprisingly fleshed out game. There's a lot going on there. And Doominate, a game where it's sort of in the vein of Quiplash or Fibbage, where you kind of have you have prompts that go where the results go head to head. And the idea is that you occasionally have to ruin the prompt by adding a negative connotation or subtext or something to it, and then later there's an opportunity to save a ruined prompt. So there's some interesting stuff in there in terms of how they guide that along. After that, we have Mega Man 3 for the Game Boy, so the 3, the Roman numerals, versus Your Shape Fitness Evolved 2013. Mega Man 3 for the Game Boy was one that we played as part of the Mega Let's Play. I want to say that was the one that was strangely difficult. It was like an extremely hard entry in the Game Boy line of Mega Man games. Your Shape Fitness Evolved 2013 was part of the Ultimate Wii U back in 2024. Like it says, it was a fitness-based game, kind of similar, if I recall correctly, to like Just Dance or Sing Party. Like it was kind of sort of an in-between sort of zone there. But fitness game for the Wii U up against a little teeny Mega Man Mega Boy game. Up next, it's Super Metroid versus Crime Wave. Super Metroid is one of the very first games that we played on the channel way back in 2011. We played for, I think, 5 episodes before CJ wound up getting us kind of stuck in a vertical tunnel that we couldn't quite escape from. If you're curious to see that tunnel again, you should probably watch my Legend of... what did we title it? The Legend of Zebes, A Link and Samus Between Worlds. Shad JV and I are doing a Super Metroid / Link to the Past combo randomizer multi-world. So we both have an SMZ3 setup that are connected through multi-world. And I found myself in the very first stream in that same vertical tunnel trying to escape from potential soft lockness. So you can see how that went there. We also covered it as part of the Super NES Classic Edition in 2017, and eventually I did properly play it for real in 2021 as part of the Scrooby Let's Play. It was the first time that I'd ever actually played that game all the way through, and I totally get it now. Crime Wave is the 3/4 top-down battle driving game. It's kind of hard to describe this one. It's kind of a combat game. I was going to say a combat racing game, but there's really no racing elements to it. There's a ticking clock, but you are essentially shooting down other cars. It's sort of like if you played Twisted Metal from the same camera angle as like Fallout 1 or 2. The trick is the camera swivels a lot as you drive, so it's kind of rotates a bunch as you're doing stuff underneath. A little bit disorienting. And that is up against Super Metroid, so good luck to that. Next up, we have Lethal RPG War versus Sonic Rumble, which I think is now Sonic Rumble Party, but at the time we played it as a beta. Lethal RPG War is a game we played from Steam back at a time period where we were kind of interested in having like a Steam series highlighting whatever we could get our hands on. At the time, we had someone who was able to get us, we had a connection who was able to get us like Steam, like early access type stuff that we then recorded Let's Plays for as kind of a review, early review material for like testimonials or things like that. Pretty straightforward RPG type interactions. It looked a little bit more in the realm of like a Diablo or like a World of Warcraft in terms of like screen UI layouts. And on the other side, we had Sonic Rumble, which is essentially a Sonic branded Fall Guys type game. You have various tasks you're trying to complete or just race to the end of a stage, playing as a bunch of chibified Sonic characters. Like I said, I think it is now Sonic Rumble Party. And it is now also available on more than just phones. I think it's got like Steam and even maybe some consoles. So there's more going on there. But at the time we played it as a beta, so it's a pretty limited window for that game. Then after that, we have The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Anniversary Edition up against Sleep Awake. So 4 Swords Anniversary Edition was part of the Legendary Let's Play. It was a special 3DS port of 4 Swords, which was one of the 2 available games for the Game Boy Advance port of A Link to the Past. So it was A Link to the Past plus 4 Swords. And the Anniversary Edition played mostly the same, but also had a kind of nostalgia zone where you had a set of levels inspired by... it was at least the original Zelda, A Link to the Past, and I think there might have been one that was Link's Awakening as well. So essentially the 3 original top-down Zelda titles before the 3D era began. So that was one that we did as a 4-player game back in 2014. The other one is Sleep Awake. So this is one that we played as part of Spooky-thon. Spookyween. Spookyween was our kind of Halloween special from last year. We played 4 games that were kind of spooky in one way or another. We actually had a 5th that we played, but we actually didn't release it after we discovered there was a ton of it was full to the tits of AI. So we were like, nope. I had my suspicions as we played it, and then realized after we recorded that was the case. So we just burned it all. It's gone. But Sleep Awake is a very interesting one. I want to say, is it Trent Reznor worked on this game? There's a musical connection here. And in Sleep Awake, you're essentially trying to escape / survive a messed up dystopia, where if you fall asleep, your body kind of, one of two things happens. Either your body just kind of dissolves and degenerates into kind of this like weird mass, or you get found by these dudes with batons who then take you away somewhere. Both are pretty bad. And your character is already utilizing various like forms of homebrew drugs to stay awake. But I think you have a sibling that you're trying to manage as well. Or maybe you did and you don't need more. We didn't get a ton of story out of this was a demo for the game that I think has since been fully released. At the time, it was just the demo, though, so we played that for Spookyween. Pretty intense stuff. A little bit weird in some areas. I hope they iron that out. But yeah, so that is those two. Four Swords Anniversary versus Sleep Awake. Next after that, we have Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge versus Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo Switch. Dr. Wily's Revenge is the first of the Game Boy Mega Man games. The rest all just do Mega Man with a Roman numeral, but this one is Dr. Wily's Revenge, probably because there's not a really meaningful way to, like, I guess they could have just made it Mega Man for the Game Boy, but, you know, they went with that instead. I'll be honest, I don't remember a lot about Dr. Wily's Revenge. It was essentially a mashup of elements from, I believe, Mega Man 1 and 2 for the Game Boy, so there are limited things that you could do there. But it was our introduction to the Game Boy series of Mega Man games, which are a lot less tied together than you might imagine. Number 2 was made by a different company altogether, and it was very, very easy. Number 3 was the originals again, and very, very hard. 4 and 5, I think, had a pretty good balance, and 1 was okay, but a little bit rudimentary, we'll say. The other one is Super Mario RPG, which I played as a solo Let's Play last year. This was the Switch version, not the Super Nintendo version. I was mostly just curious because I've been a big Mario RPG fan for my whole life, and I wanted to see how the Switch version was going to kind of work. And the end result was, yeah, I liked it quite a bit. There were some quality of life. The quality of life changes are like nice, but they make the game decidedly easier, like by a huge degree. There are things you can just kind of opt not to engage with, which will make it at least a little bit closer to the original. But I think like there's a few elements in there that are different enough that it's at least worth checking out. And then there's a small post game that goes along with it that's kind of nice. There's not a lot though. I'll be honest, there's not a ton of post game material there, but if you like Mario RPG, then the Switch one is pretty nice. So I did that one as a solo, and we had Mega Boy 1, which was back during the early Mega Let's Play days back in 2015. After that, we have Quiet Christmas versus 1000 Times Resist. So Quiet Christmas is one of the games for the Ouya that we did as part of the 12 Games of Christmas. This one, if I recall correctly, was kind of a side view camera, but it was sort of a point and click type experience. I don't think it was actually point and click. I think it was like you walk up and interact with stuff, but it was a similar kind of puzzly-ish interaction game. Pretty basic stuff on that one, but it was kind of an interesting atmosphere for it. On the other side, we have 1000 Times Resist, a game that we decided to cap off the grand finale with. It was our 1000th game that we played on the channel. And we've only got the one episode so far, and it's also very story heavy, story centric. So we haven't done a ton in there just yet. We've been kind of getting into the story for it, but we will come back to it in the future. For right now, though, we just have the one video of each of these to pit against one another. Next up from there, we have Super Back to the Future 2 versus Fall Guys. What a weird combination to have up against each other. So Super Back to the Future 2 was one that was part of a stream that I titled Hoverboard, which was literally just one day I decided I wanted to do some streaming. So I got together as many Back to the Future games as I could manage, and also Super Mario World for whenever I got tired of that. Super Back to the Future 2 is kind of the odd duck of the entire set of those, which is interesting because I don't think any of these games have quite the same sort of gameplay. So this is a platforming game. I think you spend most of your time on a hoverboard. It's a weirdly chibified game. So you've got this huge-headed Marty McFly racing around picking up like coins and stuff. I don't think we played it for very long. And on the flip side, we have Fall Guys, which we played for the, what would that have been? Extra Life in 2024. Mom said it's my turn to host the charity marathon stream. This was one where we had some technical difficulties with this one. We weren't really sure what the deal was. Maybe it was just that we had too many people trying to do it, along with actually streaming the results. But it's the first time somehow that we've ever actually played Fall Guys on the channel properly. And I think we had played Sonic Rumble prior to that. So we actually played a Fall Guys clone before actually playing Fall Guys. But yeah, so far that's it for both of these. One video and one part of one stream. Actually, I guess they're both one part of one stream. So yeah. Following up from that, we have Pokemon Y versus Iron Storm. So Pokemon Y is a game that's been covered twice in full on the channel, both for Pokemon Rivals series. The first one was John and I doing our padlock of X versus Y in 2014-2015. I played X, John played Y. And then the 2023-2024 version, the sibling rivalry matchup between Jeff and Dave, during which Dave played Pokemon Y against Jeff, who played Pokemon X. They did it as a stream series as opposed to John's and mine that were a pre-recorded Let's Play. Both of them were done as essentially the padlock format, though I think for X and for Jeff and Dave, they made a few tweaks to it to make it make sense for their format. Iron Storm was a Saturn Return game, and this was a like tactical RPG in the style of, it's basically a war tactical RPG, like Hex Grid, Advanced Wars type confrontations. Like you send your planes and it fights their planes or their anti-air barrage or what have you. It was also a very slow game. It took a long time to get through turns. After that, we have Kirby's Adventure versus Game Party Champions. So Kirby's Adventure is one that we've covered a few times now. We played it back in 2015, shortly after the passing of Satoru Iwata, kind of as a memorial type situation there in memory of. And then we played it again the following year as part of the Dreamy Let's Play. It was the second game in the series after Kirby's Dream Land. It was great to go back through it again. We played it in part again during the NES Classic Edition series. In 2022, I played the remainder of it for 100%ing as part of the Nightmare in the Dreamy Let's Play streams. So we've covered it quite a few times. And Game Party Champions is one that we did as part of the Ultimate Wii U. This was one that was like arcade style gameplay, like literally, like you play as someone who's playing games in an arcade. So there'd be like throw the football through a hole, throw the basketball into the hoop, play a game of I was gonna say skee ball, but I actually don't remember if skee ball was in there. Air hockey though, I think was. I'm trying to remember. A lot of arcade style games. So I think there were 9 games in total that you could play. Maybe it was 12. I think it was 9. So that up against Kirby's Adventure. We have another Kirby game next. It is Kirby's Return to Dreamland versus Drop Pockets. Kirby's Return to Dreamland is interesting because that is one that we have played technically a bunch of times. So we first played it back in 2011. It was one of the very first games we played on the channel. I don't think we finished it. We probably got about halfway through, I think, and then we just kind of never came back to it. But then in 2020, we played it as part of the Dreamy Let's Play. We finally got up to the Return to Dreamland portion, and we played that game in full there. There's also a Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe type situation that came later on, but that's its own entry. Drop Pockets is one that we did as part of the Cursed Casino last year, or Cursed Casino, And that one is definitely riding on the post-Balatro wave of gimmicky roguelikes. This one is a pool roguelike where you gain a bunch of like abilities and things by clearing pool matches and then grabbing like here's pool balls, here's pool cues and other enchantments and things that can improve your ability to play pool. So that one is interesting considering we also played Balatro as part of that series, but we had Drop Pockets as part of the Cursed Casino streams, and then Kirby's Return to Dreamland that we played about a decade apart. Following that, we have Five Nights at Freddy's 3 versus Marvelous, Another Treasure Island. Five Nights at Freddy's 3, I believe, was the one that I piloted. That one is one where rather than you being kind of assaulted by several animatronics, it is just you and Springtrap, who is constantly stalking the halls, and you have to kind of coax him to go away from you instead of discovering you. That was part of the Fright Before Christmas, part of that series. I think that was 6 games in total. And then Marvelous Another Treasure Island we played as part of the legendary Let's Play Reawakens. This one is so interesting because it is a game that was inspired by A Link to the Past and then in turn had a Satellaview sequel type thing. It actually had 2 of them, which were almost remade at one point. And then the remake was canceled and turned into Tetris Trackers, which then became named Navi Trackers, which was then included in only the Japanese and Korean versions of Four Swords Adventures on the GameCube. So a lot going on there. Your 3 heroes, Max, Dion, and don't remember, also appear as spirits in Smash Bros. Ultimate. It was also the directorial debut of Eiji Aonuma, who was very much in love with A Link to the Past and wanted to do a game that was inspired by that. And it wound up being enough of a success that it caught the attention of Shigeru Miyamoto, who tapped Aonuma to be the director for Ocarina of Time. So there's a lot of Zelda-y connections going on in there. So Five Nights at Freddy's 3 versus Marvelous Another Treasure Island. You play as the 3 boys. They have a bunch of items. It's kind of Goof Troop-like. It's kind of a fusion of Goof Troop and A Link to the Past, where you're solving weird puzzles with items and navigating your way to the finish. Following that up, we have Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire Special Demo version versus Mr. Bones. So the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire Special Demo version was, as you might expect, a demo version of the Gen 3 Pokemon remakes with like a special scenario that you're only in for the demo. I think you pick up... do you actually get a Mega Latios or Latios as part of that? I don't think you could transfer anything out, but you essentially get to check out both the ways that the games have been updated as well as how the like Mega Stones are going to factor in and that sort of thing too. Mr. Bones is a Sega Saturn game. We actually played it as a combined finale for Spooky Ween and an opening to Saturn Return, where it fit into both. It seemed like a great crossover. Mr. Bones is the story of a reanimated skeleton who decides he doesn't want to work for his master, whose hilarious name I've forgotten. And so he seeks to use the power of rock and roll to defeat his enemies. It is so fucking hard. We spent, I think, 2 hours on that game, and we got maybe like a quarter of the way through it. There's a lot going on there. Very difficult. I'm sure we'll come back to it again. But that is what's up against Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire Special Demo version. After that, we have Mega Man 4 versus Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. So Mega Man 4 for the NES is part of the Mega Let's Play. Pretty straightforward on that. It is a classic NES Mega Man game. I believe that's the one with like Pharaoh Man and Toad Man and them. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is the Sonic Racing game that came out late last year. I think it was late last year. It might have been middle last year. We've done a very small amount of coverage for that. We played the beta for it last year. That's what it is. And then I think the game came out later in the year. We have material recorded for it, but it's not going to come out before this first vote. So for right now, we're only talking about a single video covering the beta of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and if it survives beyond this, then we can look at more videos from there. Following that, we have Super Mega Worm versus Santa 2 going up against The Legend of Oasis. Super Mega Worm versus Santa 2 was part of the 12 Games of Christmas. It was an Ouya title. In this one, I believe you control a worm that's like careening through the sky. You're trying to collect power-ups and things to eat and all of that. Pretty short gameplay loop, but kind of an interesting one there. The Legend of Oasis, I think, is either the prequel or sequel to a title we had done previously in like a Genesis Mini or something. I don't think it was like Crusader of Senti. I think it was a different one. But it's a kind of top-down stabby type game where you are coming from the top down and stabbing stuff. I don't know if I have a lot to say about that one. Both of these were one-off games as part of a larger series. So, you can check out them in the attached links. Coming up after that, we have Mega Man X2 versus Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. So Mega Man X2 for the Super Nintendo, we did that as part of the Mega Let's Play. I grew up with Mega Man X, but I really had no major experience with the X games. The games that I had grown up with in terms of Mega Man X as a series, I played a shitload of Mega Man X. I had played some of, I think, either X4 or X5, and I played a lot of, not a lot of, but I had Mega Man X Command Mission. So I didn't have a ton of the kind of in-between games in there. So X2 was one that was brand new to me when we sat down for this. Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, a recent, I think 2023, 2024 remake of Dragon Quest III, one of the all-time most beloved RPGs, including myself. I am a big fan of Dragon Quest III. We have technically done everything in the game minus the final super boss, which we're going to come back to when we are ready to start our Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake series. But so the entire rest of it is visible online right now. After that, we have The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess versus World Series Baseball. The Legend of Zelda, so Twilight Princess, this was one that we did for, I'd say, most of the Legendary Let's Play. Either that or Skyward Sword would have been the ones that we played for the longest during the original Legendary Let's Play. But it's the one on the GameCube/Wii. It's the one where you play as a Link that turns into a wolf. It's the one with Midna. It's the one with the Zant. It's the one with the Twili, however you want to pronounce those. Spooky vibes, but not as dark of a game as you might anticipate from those vibes. It's definitely kind of downbeat. Midna's Lament is one of the best songs in the franchise. But, an extension of what Ocarina of Time had given the creators for lessons. And then we have World Series Baseball, which is a baseball game for the Sega Saturn that we played as part of Saturn Return. It's a baseball game for the Sega Saturn, not to be confused with World Series Baseball starring Deion Sanders, which is a different game for a different console, released very close together. And then we have Mega Man 6 versus Fast Racing Neo. Mega Man 6 is one of the few Mega Man games we've actually done more than once. We played it for the Mega Let's Play during the early stages of that when we were covering NES games. And then we came back to it as part of the games. I think specifically for the second games. I want to say it was our skiing? No, yeah, it was our cross-country skiing event, I think. It was either that or Yoshi's Island. I can't remember which one. No, I think that was ski jumping. Yeah, this would have been cross-country skiing where you had to race through Blizzard Man's level. I think I got that right. And then beat Blizzard Man as fast as possible. Fast Racing Neo is part of the Fast Racing series. This one was a little bit controversial in terms of its choice for the Ultimate Wii U because it might kind of be a port of an earlier one. It's a little hard to say like definitively. There's a lot of overlap. They bring back old tracks pretty regularly, it seems like. But it was an F-Zero-like game for the Wii U. Honestly, a pretty decent, substitute while we wait for them to remember that they can make F-Zero games. All right, how are we feeling? How are we doing so far? Camera died. We're fine. We're now at the halfway point through the list of matchups we got so far. It's definitely been just a few seconds. Don't worry about that. Anyway, Getting into our second half of this particular heat, next up we have Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles and Burning Rangers. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is one of our oldest games. We played it during Sonic Week, which would make that I think the fourth game we ever played on the channel. We played it during the Supersonic Let's Play back in 2016. We had a race for it we actually had two things back to back. We had a race for it during the 10th anniversary marathon stream. And then we also, I covered it for Sonic Weekathon in June or maybe July of that same year. Burning Rangers is a Sega Saturn game. We did it for Saturn Return, where it was, I think that's the one where you play as a bunch of like futuristic firefighters and you're fighting a bunch of fires, sometimes a little bit literally. Very interesting, weird sort of game. But we got some Sega rep going on both sides there. After that, we have Mega Man 8 versus Jackie Chan in Fists of Fire, which I think was our 900th game. I think it was another. So Mega Man 8, obviously, Mega Man game, part of the Mega Let's Play. We did it in 2016, so it was a little bit further in after we did like Mega Man X and stuff like that. Fists of Fire, I believe, is a Jackie Chan-based fighting game. And this is one where there were a bunch of... I don't actually know how they chose the characters to go with for this. But if I recall correctly, there were 3 different Jackie Chans that represented 3 different movies that he'd been in. I think there was a drunken boxing version of him, along with like a kung fu one. I think it was a very interesting concept for a fighting game. One of the weirdest ones I've ever seen. The next one is pretty interesting. We have Pokemon Omega Ruby versus Majora's Marathon. So Pokemon Omega Ruby was another one that we did for a padlock. This one was the John side of the Omega Ruby versus Alpha Sapphire series. This was 2014, 2015. It was the first, I think it was the first remake that we had properly done as a padlock. And then on the other side, we have Majora's Marathon, which is what I did for the D-Pad's 14th anniversary. So last year, 2025, it was a 72-hour marathon stream, which we'd never done before. And it was actually a game. The reason it's a separate thing and not just Majora's Mask or Majora's Mask 3D or Majora's Mask Randomizer is because it is a modded version of Majora's Mask that I specifically created, where once you hit start, like once you start your file, you get loaded into the first cycle. Once you get out of and a timer silently triggers in the background. Once you're out of that first cycle, so essentially once you have the Ocarina and the Song of Time, so you can go back through the loops, anytime that, how to describe this, anytime that the in-game elapsed time matches or exceeds the out-of-world real elapsed time, the cycle automatically resets. So what that means is when an hour has passed in the real world, you are only able to play from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. of the first day of Majora's Mask. It was an experiment in a few things, including me modding stuff, but the experiment was really kind of focused on like, hey, how much harder and weirder does this game get if you only have access to certain amounts of time as you try to go through it? The answer was you actually aren't held back all that much, and you could genuinely beat the entire game without ever leaving the first day. You couldn't 100% it. Like, you can't do the Anju and Cafe quest at all. Well, not at all, but you couldn't finish it if you were stuck on the first day. And there's a few, like, you wouldn't get the Gilded Sword, Razor Sword. I've forgotten which one's which, but there for the most part, you can do just about everything in the game with just the first day. So that was an interesting time. I was very tired by the end of it. All right. After this, we have our second Mega Man, and I put that in quotes, not sarcastically, but to mean literally, quote, Mega Man, quote, versus Mario Kart. Previously we had, I think it was Mega Man for the NES versus Mario Kart DS. This is Mega Man for DOS versus Mario Kart World. Mega Man for DOS is exactly what it sounds like. Rosner Labs got the license to develop a pair of Mega Man games for DOS, the DOS operating system, back in, I don't know, I guess it would have been like 1988, maybe 1989. And they are notoriously weird and hard to play and difficult. And there are definitely some D-pad memes that have specifically come out of that. Perhaps most of all, Rush. No. The other one being Mario Kart World, the most recent Mario Kart game. This is one that I've also done solo. Open world style Mario Kart game where you can also do your like Grand Prix and knockout tour and stuff like that. But you can also explore the entire open world they've built for like all of these racetracks to exist within, collecting, piece switches and question block panels and Peach medallions and stuff. It's been interesting. It's not quite done yet, but we've gotten through, we've cleared all of the question block panels as of right now in terms of recording. So at some point soon, I'm going back to clear out the rest of what's in the game, collect the rest of the stickers. But for right now, there's a pretty good amount that's in there. Next up, we have War Daddy War Harder versus Jet Set Radio. War Daddy War Harder was part of the 12 Games of Christmas, one of the Ouya ones. And if I recall correctly, it was basically like if Geometry Wars had a really intense, like, crack cocaine addiction. It just seemed like stimulus overload incarnate. If I'm remembering this correctly, if I'm thinking of the correct game, it was a lot. I don't remember much about it other than that it was just bright and noise and things. I don't remember our commentary on it either because I think my brain just repressed it in real time. Jet Set Radio was part of the grand finale, so one of our lead-ups to the 1000th game. This was another one that John and CJ were really intent on doing at some point, and we got a good chunk of time in there. It's one that we intend to go back to at some point. It's not happening just yet, but at some point it'll be back. But we do have one video for each of these to gauge against each other for now. So next up after that, we have Back to the Future for, I believe, the NES and Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. Back to the Future was part of that hoverboard stream. And if I recall correctly, this is the one that is probably best known thanks to the Angry Video Game Nerd. The one where you are moving up the street, kind of like Paperboy, and you're throwing bowling balls and trying to avoid panes of glass and like weird stuff. Very strange, has next to nothing to do with Back to the Future, and hard, just esoteric for no reason at all. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival is like what happens if Mario Party took Ambien. I actually don't know if that's the right reference. I don't know anything about Ambien. I have no idea. That was just where my brain reached to. It's a very cozy Mario Party. You just roll, you move, stuff happens. I don't recall there being much of any mini games. There might have been a couple, but there were not many if there were. And at a certain point, the stock market happens, and you try to sell your, onions, I think, for bells. And it just depends what spaces you're landing on that give you your options. Pretty low energy Mario Party. I think that was that was me and Sarah doing that one. Oh, also, you have to play using amiibos, and the way that you claim your turn and roll the die, or dice, I don't know how many there were, is by taking your amiibo and tapping the Wii U gamepad with it. So very fun controls. All right, after this, we have a head-to-head Zelda showdown. We have The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages versus The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask Randomizer. So Oracle of Ages was part of the original Legendary Let's Play run. We would have been doing that kind of in the middle-ish of everything. I guess fairly late, actually. That would have been between, I think, Oracle of Seasons and Minish Cap. So that would have been like summer of 2014, something like that. Maybe almost into the fall. Majora's Mask Randomizer is one that is a pretty recent addition. Because Majora's Mask randomizers didn't exist until all that recently, at least on their own. I'm a little unclear on why. For a while, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask had a combo randomizer, but Majora's Mask didn't have a solo randomizer, and I'm not sure why that is. But I wound up doing a randomizer with Shad JV and Good King Linky. The first of 3 streams for that is currently online, but I'm going to rework it. I don't really like how the video came out editing wise, so I'm going to tweak it, and then all 3 of them are going to go live. But the idea was it was actually a race. We called it Against the Clock, a Majora's Mask randomizer race, and the idea was the 3 of us had the exact same seed, and we couldn't see each other's screens, and so we were racing to see who could defeat Majora first with that seed. If you're interested to find out how it went, then you're just going to have to keep an eye out for the final videos. The first one is up, but again, I want to adjust it a little bit. There's stuff on there that I just want to look nicer. But yeah. Another odd one up next, we have ToeJam and Earl in Panic on Funkotron versus Star Fox Guard. ToeJam and Earl in Panic on Funkotron, basically ToeJam and Earl 2, is such a weird sequel because ToeJam and Earl, the first one, is a kind of 3/4 view. It's literally a roguelike, honestly. And it's just a very strange alien, like you playing as ToeJam and Earl, who are 2 aliens from Funkotron trying to escape from Earth. This game, the idea is a bunch of Earthlings hitched a ride on their spaceship home, and now they have invaded Funkotron, and you're trying to save Funkotron from the humans. It is now a platforming game, and it's the most muddy, floaty, weird platforming game I think I may have ever played. It's so strange. Also, your characters are enormous on the screen. They take up so much space. And all the enemies move fast and hit hard. So, like, it's very strange. We played it once in 2015 as part of sort of... we had been tossing around, like, a funky Let's Play. That was going to be the 4 ToeJam games. We wound up playing 3 of the 4. Not even necessarily for that, but we played 3 of them. The only one we haven't played is, what I understand is the worst of all, the Xbox one, whose name escapes me. It might literally just be ToeJam and Earl 3. We also played it briefly for the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series back in 2022. Star Fox Guard was a game we played for the Ultimate Wii U, and that was a pack-in... It's so weird. It's a pack-in title with the physical release of Star Fox Zero. And with this one it's essentially a tower defense game. You have kind of a scientific base that is under attack, and you need to put down defenses. I want to say, I can't remember if the turrets will fire automatically or if you have to like kind of like jump into them to control them. They might attack a little bit, and if you're in them manually, you can do a lot faster. I don't really recall. Interesting as a turret game. It seems like with the like level up sort of system they had, that they expect you to play a fucking lot of this game. There's like 100 levels that you can achieve, and I think we got to like 5 by the time we were done. So clearly they were expecting people to play a lot of it, but 2 very interesting spacey sort of games here. All right, after this we have Pokemon Fire Red version versus Buckshot Roulette. Pokemon Fire Red is an interesting one. So that was originally meant to be the first Padlock, and then just because of the circumstances surrounding like getting it recorded, we wound up not doing it as a combined thing, and John and I just did separate Nuzlockes of Fire Red and Leaf Green. So I recorded, I want to say 75 episodes. I think I got through the first 6 gyms, or maybe it was 5 or 6. I think I got both Sabrina and Koga, and that was 2012, 2013. The quality of the microphone and the video, all of it's terrible in terms of, I mean, it's not, it, you know what? I take that back. The audio was a little rough, but the video was fine. Nowadays I would want it to look a lot different, but it's also, 13, 14 years later. So, we came back to it in 2015 when John actually started doing Leaf Green, and I finished my game. He did all of his, and neither of us did the post game. And we were also racing to get through, because I think we were going to start either Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire or maybe it was Insurgents. We had something we were going to jump into immediately after. And then in 2022, in April of 2022, for the 10th anniversary of Pokemon Fire Red, I quietly recorded oh no, actually, I'm trying to remember now if I streamed it. I don't remember if I streamed it or if I pre-recorded it, but I did a post-game episode. I did the entire post-game for the 10th anniversary. And we both got through the whole post-game. I think we caught Mewtwo, I'm pretty sure. And then I ended with transferring a bunch of my Pokemon to Pokemon Home. Nope, that's wrong. I'm misremembering that. That was Let's Go. Was that Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee? Oh my God, I don't remember now. No, I think I basically because Fire Red and Leaf Green were emulated. So I want to say that I had sneakily figured out a way to get that stuff traded to a legit device in game and then transfer it up or something. I think I recall Pokemon Home being in there and I don't remember how. No, it's fine. It's not important. The other one is Buckshot Roulette. This was our kind of multiplayer entry into the Cursed Casino from last year. If I recall correctly, it was myself, CJ, Sarah, and Jeff. Maybe it was Dave. I don't remember. I can't remember. One of the Hook brothers, I believe, was part of that. And it was, I did the single player campaign. It was over very quickly. And then we did some four-way matchups. It was interesting to see how people kind of try to bluff each other out and all of that. So it was an interesting time. But yeah, two very different games there. Pokemon Fire Red, Buckshot Roulette. After that, we have Mega Man 7 versus The Legend of Zelda Dungeons of Infinity. Mega Man 7, part of the Mega Let's Play. Did that one back in 2015. And not a lot to say about that one. It's interesting because I feel like I'm betraying some of these games by not talking about them, but at the same time, some of them are just very straightforwardly, here's what the game is. Dungeons of Infinity was a Zelda I don't actually know if it was modded from A Link to the Past or if it was a fully original. I think it was an originally created thing because I recall the developer saying that it was really tough to figure out how to make a bunch of things interact. But Dungeons of Infinity was essentially a Link to the Past inspired roguelike, which rather infamously ended. I don't know if it still does. At the time, though, back in 2024, it ended with a fight against Aghanim where the first thing he does is take away all of your roguelike upgrades, which wasn't cool. Was not happy with that. A lot of people were upset about it in the Discord. I have no idea if that's changed. I'm not really interested in playing again. It was 4.5 hours, and I just don't want to do that just to have a second chance at a boss fight. But Mega Man 7 and Dungeons of Infinity. All right, from here we have 6 Days of Sacrifice versus High Velocity Mountain Racing Challenge. So 6 Days of Sacrifice was one of the Mythic Let's Play, as we retroactively called it, series of games where we played the 4 main titles of the Chizo Mythos. 6 Days of Sacrifice is the final one of those, taking place in, I think, the 22nd century. I think it takes place about 200 years in the future. It's got a lot of throwbacks to the previous titles in that series, including some really interesting horror elements, some interesting jump scare type things, some stuff that did not age well, even in the short term, let alone the long term. So certainly not a perfect title, but an interesting way to wrap up that particular series. High Velocity is a racing game for the Saturn. We did it as part of Saturn Return. And Peter and I played that one. Kind of like a stock car racing along mountain slopes sort of deal with that. Not a lot to say about it necessarily. It was a one video thing. So those are our two there. After that, we have Mega Man 3, The Robots Are Revolting versus Donkey Kong 94. I'm just looking at my details, making sure I got that correct. Yes. So Mega Man 3 for DOS, The Robots Are Revolting. Same stuff goes for that one as did for the original Mega Man for DOS. The major addition here is that Mega Man can swim, something that he's never been able to do in any other Mega Man game. I think in either the Zero or ZX series you can kind of like float, but otherwise everybody else just sinks to the bottom. And Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, the last game to feature his original design before Donkey Kong Country released that same year, went with the new Rare design. It starts out pretty much identical to the arcade game Donkey Kong before expanding into 100 levels of platforming, and it's actually, I believe, the game that introduces Mario's more gymnastic maneuvers. Like, this predates Super Mario 64 by 2 years, and he's doing backflips and stuff. It's actually kind of amazing to see what elements of this seem to have carried forward. Really good game, though. It was a lot of fun. Very hard in spots, but it was a great kind of puzzle type thing. And if I recall correctly, kind of serves as the predecessor to the Mario versus DK, like, and March of the Minis and all of that stuff. That series of games, very similar kind of initial premise. All right, after that we have Nintendo Land and Congo the Movie: The Lost City of Zinj. Nintendo Land is kind of interesting because our first exposure to it was for the Battle Quest game specifically inside of it. Which we played in 2013. We played until we beat Ganon. And then in 2020, we came back around to it to beat the bonus levels that were there. That's the one where one player has the gamepad and is the archer, and the other players play with Wiimotes and they're swordsmen. In 2024, we came back around to it as part of the Ultimate Wii U when we played all the other games that were in there. I think there were 11 other games. So we got to see all the different... The big focuses were like the ability to, like, both second screen gameplay and asymmetric gameplay. So there were a lot of games that did that. Congo the Movie: Lost City of Zinj was a Saturn game that we did for Saturn Return. This was one, if I recall correctly, first-person view, kind of Doom-like controls and things. Just trying to get through the jungle, dealing with all these like giant animal creature things. Very hard, very unforgiving. And apparently a video game based on Congo the Movie. It's so interesting because it's Congo the Movie: The Lost City of Zinj, but I don't believe the movie is called Congo the Movie. I think the movie is just called Congo. So Congo's video game is called Congo the Movie with a subtitle. It's kind of weird. Huh. We got a spooky shadow face-off for this next one. We have Shadowgate versus Heretic: Shadow of the Serpent Riders. So Shadowgate is one that we did for the Fright Before Christmas. This one is a point-and-click adventure, very much in the style of your like LucasArts type games. So very similar in a sense to like your Maniac Mansion, all of that stuff. If anything, it actually is probably the closest to Deja Vu for the NES. If anyone's ever played that one, it might literally be the same company that made both. Deja Vu just recently had kind of a very minor revival, as well as actually Shadowgate. Both of them did. So maybe that was like one company that did both of them. Heretic: Shadow of the Serpent Riders was part of the Let's Rip and Tear 90-Minute Nails series that CJ has been doing. It is, I believe, the expanded version of the original Heretic that had like an extra episode at the end. The first id Software title that is in the format that came to expand out to like... Oh, actually, no, that's probably not right. It is chronologically first in terms of what time it seems to take place. CJ has been doing an interesting thing where he's playing these in universe chronological order, essentially. And this is the one that would appear to be the furthest back. Sword and sorcery type stuff, but a little bit on the basic side. Hexen would later expand on it. Hexen 2 would later expand on it even more. And it really was, they were really pushing the envelope as far as what you could do with a first person shooter type game back then. After that, we have The Legend of Zelda: Phantom Hourglass versus Pokemon Legends ZA. Phantom Hourglass, the sequel to the Wind Waker. It is for the DS. It is the one where you draw where you want your boat to go, and your boat kind of just follows the path. I was not much a fan of the DS Zelda games because the control scheme was kind of awkward. but we did get through it. I forget if the panpipe was part of Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks. Might have been Spirit Tracks. I don't know. Also, our recordable 3DS that we were using was having a little bit of trouble at the time. It eventually got better, but we were having trouble with the thumb pad for a little bit, which may have, I guess for this game, it wouldn't really make much of a difference, but for other ones it was. Pokemon Legends ZA is a game that we're still playing right now. Brand new Pokemon title. Takes place some number of years after Pokemon X and Y in Lumiose City, which is kind of the central main city of Kalos. And we're still kind of figuring out what's really going on there. Something weird is happening, and it's related to Mega Energy. And that's where we're at. It's been good so far. I've been enjoying it, though. A little bit less... I was going to say a little bit less aimless, but that's not really right. A little bit, it's both less bounded and more bounded at the same time than Pokemon Legends Arceus. So it'll be interesting to see where this one goes. After this, we have Splatoon versus Drova Forsaken Kin. Splatoon is a very interesting one because we played it twice. The first time we played it for a stream in 2015, the game might have been pretty new, and our streaming setup was really, really bad. The video is, I wouldn't even say borderline. I would say it is fully unwatchable. Our frame rate was occasionally less than 1 frame per second. We did not know what we were doing with our settings. I eventually came back around to this. I guess we eventually came back around to this for the Ultimate Wii U, where it became the finale, where there were, I think we did a series plus 2 bonus videos. The first bonus video was I essentially recorded 2 streams 2 days apart, one of which was the last night that I knew that I was free to stream, and then 2 days later, during the first 99-turn Mario Party Madness, I literally had a separate recording going of me simultaneously playing Splatoon, because that was the day the servers were going offline for the Wii U. I think I played Splatoon for around 8 hours. I was expecting to be playing for literally between minutes and maybe an hour and change. And instead, the servers just kept on going till I think about 2 in the morning when they finally stopped working correctly. So it was a very long stream. And in between releasing those, we also recorded a full Let's Play of the single-player campaign. So we got to see pretty much the entirety of Splatoon, which was kind of nice. Drova Forsaken Kin is a Dave stream that I do not remember very well at all. It looks to be kind of a Secret of Mana meshed with Don't Starve, meshed with Stardew Valley. Like, it seems like it's kind of a mishmash of a couple different things going on there. I personally do not know much about it, though, so you should go and check out the video of Dave streaming it. It's a single stream, and it's, only a couple hours long, but you should go check it out. After that, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 and Astal. Sonic 4 Episode 1 is technically, I think, the 5th game we've ever played on the channel. And it's so strange because I still have such a vivid memory of this. And in fact, so we, back in 2011, used to, I guess most of Sonic Week was emulated, with the exception of Sonic 4 Episode 1, which we recorded on this. I'll put it next to my head because that's where I'm actually focused. This is the EasyCap capture device. It has red, yellow, white connectors, as well as, I think, S-Video. Yeah, that looks like S-Video. And we had this plugged in, and we were recording with it. And on our end, the game was running at like a frame per second. So we gave up on it super fast and switched over to Knuckles Chaotix instead. At the time, Sonic 4 was pretty new. So the plan was that was going to be the final thing. Knuckles Chaotix was very much an unplanned backup. And then when we go to edit the video captured beautifully. It was crystal clear. I'm pretty sure 60 frames a second, at least 30. And it looked fine. So we looked like complete idiots going, I can't tell what's going on. We have yet to return to that in the Supersonic Let's Play, but it is getting close. We're finally getting near there. I think we have Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood first, so it's going to be a little bit still, but like we're almost back to that game after 15 years. The other one is Astal, a platforming action-adventure type game for the Saturn that we did for Saturn Return. And that one, it was interesting. You play as kind of this little like dwarfy kind of maybe more impish type guy. I think you had like a bird friend or something, and just kind of an odd little game. Watching it will make more sense than me trying to explain it. Both of these are no more than one video. Sonic 4 Episode 1 is like 3 minutes of one video, so there's not a lot that's there. But we do have some commentary for it, so it does count. So, I don't know, go check them both out. After this, we have Saints Row 4 Re-Elected versus Fight of Gods. So Saints Row 4 Re-Elected was a game that I streamed pretty early on for one stream. The frame rate was still bad. It wasn't as bad as Splatoon, but it was still pretty rough. On the flip side, we have Fight of Gods, which was part of the D-Pad's 13th anniversary stream. This was part of Punch Dave Hook's Money, if I recall correctly. And it was one in which you play as a number of deities of different religions or deified figures from different religions in a fighting game. I think like you can play as Jesus. I think you can play as Santa, if we're to refer back to deified characters. There were a number of gods of different religions in there. Defies explanation. Such a weird experience. Interesting. That's all I really got. After that, we have Super Smash Bros. For Wii U versus Evoland 2. Smash for Wii U is one that we've covered twice. We played it just on its own when it first came out. Over the span of about 2 years, we played the game, and then we kept coming back for the DLC each time they put a new DLC out. And then we did it again in 2020 for the Dreamy Let's Play when that caught up to there. And we essentially, I think we started from scratch and unlocked everything. And that was kind of our condition for completion there. Or maybe we needed to, it might have been that we decided to clear the entire first challenge board. I think for the Wii U, no, it was the 3DS one has 3 different challenge boards. I don't really remember. One of them was we cleared a challenge board. One of them we might have just cleared a number of challenges. The other one being Evoland 2. So this is one that was actually part of the Majora's Marathon stream. So this is one. So day 3, there was so little that we could do other than just wait for time to pass so we could finish off like Anju and Kafei's quest that I just started playing. So on day 2, there was like at least a few hours of space. So I played Evoland 1, which is like a 5-ish hour game. Evoland 2, we probably played for a good 12 hours, maybe more like 16 or something. And we played the whole game. I don't think we quite 100%ed it because there was like, we didn't have time to get everything, but we did beat the game and then returned back to Majora's Marathon. But John was there for a bit of that. Dave was there for a bit of that. I think Dave actually piloted for a good chunk of it when we got into the like Fire Emblem style tactical RPG portion, since Evoland 1 and 2 are both big send-ups to other games and franchises. Very unique game. I would recommend people play it for themselves as well. But yeah, Smash for Wii U versus Evoland 2. After that, we have Mega Man 3 for the NES versus Kingdom Hearts 0.2 Birth by Sleep hyphen a fragmentary passage hyphen. Mega Man 3, classic NES Mega Man game. We played it for the Mega Let's Play back in 2015. Kingdom Hearts 0.2 Birth by Sleep, a fragmentary passage it might have been the most recent Kingdom Hearts thing we've done. I think it might be. And I think it was only like 6 half-hour episodes. It's a very short, it's essentially bridging the gap between the end and epilogue of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and which is internally also sort of Kingdom Hearts 0 and Kingdom Hearts 1. Literally, the ending of a fragmentary passage ties in directly to the ending of Kingdom Hearts 1. So is it the most important thing in there? No, but it does explain why Mickey doesn't have a shirt on. All right, everybody take a deep breath, because for this one, we have Baba Badalgarag Takamina Ron Con Bron Tonaron Twan Thun Travar Hauna Skon Tuhuhor Denenthernuk, better known to most of us on the channel as Baba Badalgara, versus Final Fantasy Tactics, The Ivalice Chronicles. Baba Badalgara is I believe it's a Terry Kavanagh game. The premise of that is you are playing, God, this is so weird. You're playing a Doom-like game where you're shooting, I don't even remember what you're shooting because the framing device barely matters. At some point, you're picking up different weapons, machine guns, automatic rifles, an RPG launcher. When you fire the RPG launcher, it launches an RPG. A role-playing game emerges. Very rudimentary, like Dragon Warrior type situation. And as you walk around in this RPG and you talk to people, they speak in James Joyce love letter quotes, which, if you're not familiar with James Joyce's love letters, my dude was a freak. Holy cow. Really, really into farts. Loved him some farts. Yeah. It was an Ouya game from the 12 Games of Christmas. Yet another one that defies explanation. You really should just watch the video to understand what the fuck I'm talking about, because I'm not lying. All of this is true, and I sound like I'm having like an episode. On the other side, we have Final Fantasy Tactics, The Ivalice Chronicles, which we played for the grand finale, a kind of remaster or the second remaster of Final Fantasy Tactics. Previously, the War of the Lions for the PSP, and now we've got the Ivalice Chronicles for basically every modern system. You can toggle on and off the various upgrades. The script is kind of interesting because there's 4 scripts that are available in the game. But and out of the 3 game experiences there have been now, or of the 2 game experiences that came before, in the Japanese version, you can either get the original script or a brand new script. I think they might have very barely tweaked it. I think in Japanese, they might have just kept the original the whole way. In English-speaking countries, you either get the War of the Lions script or a brand new localization that tries to get closer to the original. As opposed to the one we had in Final Fantasy Tactics, which the original PlayStation game, which had a different localization. It's interesting stuff. We are going to come back around to that. That was one that like John and Ben and folks have been wanting to do for a while, so we included that in the grand finale. After that, we have Back to the Future Part 2 and 3 versus Dr. Luigi. So Back to the Future Part 2 and 3 is another nonsensical Back to the Future game, this time in the form of a platformer where there's like pits. Like it literally is like old school platformer. There's bottomless pits you can fall into. And if you do, the DeLorean will come like pick you up sometimes and save you if you have like extra lives or something. Weird game. It was part of the hoverboard stream. On the other side, we have Dr. Luigi, which was part of the Ultimate Wii U, a Dr. Mario game starring Luigi. They had a mode whose name I don't remember that was really awkward because you dragged the pills into the screen and the pills were enormous. Weird game. Both of them are very weird. So that's, I guess, your connecting thread between these two. After that, we have Pokemon Pearl version versus Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei. Maybe the first game I've ever heard of that has the same subtitled number twice. Kind of weird. Pokemon Pearl is one is actually the first, I think, set of games that CJ and Felice did. This one was one that CJ did versus the Elite Four, fighting the Sinnoh Elite Four. Eventually, we would play Pokemon Shining Pearl, as well as Brilliant Diamond, and Jeff also separately played Pokemon Platinum as a stream. On the flip side, we have Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei, which we did for the Saturn Return last year. I have not played a lot of Panzer Dragoon, so I can't really compare it to other games in that series, but you fly around in a dragon and you shoot stuff with your dragon. I recall it being rather fucking hard. Yeah. All right. After this, we now have 2 World games going up against each other. We have Super Mario World versus Pushmo World. Super Mario World, we actually played kind of a lot. We played it twice in 2015. First for the Super Mega Collaborative Let's Play. Literally a Let's Play series that I don't even remember who organized this. This was back in the day where I was active on and a moderator for the Let's Play subreddit, which I haven't been in years and years at this point. But someone got together, apparently 65-ish YouTubers, to play one level piece of Super Mario World, and we got the literal second to last level, not counting, like, essentially the level before Bowser's Castle. So we got to help bring it back home, which was kind of neat. Then it was in the hoverboard stream, which I don't know if I 100%ed it or just any percent beat it as part of that. We then played it a couple years later for the Super NES Classic Edition. And then last year, I actually was in a race with, oh boy, who was it? With Shellshock Prime, Corshell Valent, and Mr. Ben. A 4-way race of Super Mario World to see who could get there the fastest. I want to say our restrictions, it was any percent, but we were not allowed to go to Star Road. We had to follow the actual progression of levels to get where we were going. So that was kind of an interesting time. I think that was our 3rd race, because we had also done Mega Man X and Sonic Mania as well. And yeah, so a lot of Super Mario World. Pushmo World is a puzzle game for the Wii U. We played it as part of the Ultimate Wii U, pushing and pulling of blocks, doing stuff in 3D. I had never played any Pushmo games. I think there's 3 of them, and all of them are now no longer accessible because all of them were Wii U or 3DS games. I do hope that whoever owns the license re-releases them down the line, because they were actually very charming, and I would love to go back and play more Pushmo World at least. I think I downloaded all the 3DS ones also, but I'd have to double check. Charming game, was a lot of fun to do, and Super Mario World is a classic. Following this, we have, I suppose, depending on how you look at it, the oldest tradition on the channel through Tecmo Super Bowl, and that is up against Shining the Holy Ark. Tecmo Super Bowl is the game that we traditionally use. It's modded every year, but we traditionally use that for our Let's Predict the Super Bowl series that we've been doing since February of 2012. We recently did our 15th Let's Predict the Super Bowl earlier this year. And the idea is we have a computer versus computer game of the 2 teams that are going up against each other in the Super Bowl, and we see who wins. And I would say it started out extremely inaccurate, but it's gotten more accurate over time. It's been actually very interesting to see. And on the flip side, we have Shining the Holy Ark, which was part of Saturn Return. This one is the one where you do your traveling in a first-person view, and then when you have random encounters, you take part in fairly traditional Shining series RPG battles. A little bit clunky, but interesting. It's a game that I wouldn't mind going back to one of these days at my own speed, but pretty interesting game. All right, following that, we have Mega Man Battle Network 3 Blue version versus Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. Battle Network 3 is the first really promising entry in Battle Network, in my opinion. I think 1 is fine. I think 2 is quite good. 3 is where it really started to crystallize. The post game is a fucking nightmare, but it is a really, really good game for the main, like, meat and potatoes of it. Warhammer 40K, I know nothing about, to be dead honest, but Space Marine 2 action 3D, like fighting on like a battlefield type stuff, big armor, big chunky armor type dudes fighting in things. That was one of the Dave streams. I think it was 4 videos. If you want to check that out, then I would highly recommend it. Then we have Hyrule Warriors versus Lunacy. So Hyrule Warriors, in this case, is the original Wii U, I think, release of the game, which we played 2014, 2015. I think we mostly played it originally as part of the Mega Let's Play, the Legendary Let's Play, and then they released some DLC after we had wrapped up the main portion of it, so we did go back to it. There's like Ganon DLC and stuff. Interesting game. It is essentially Dynasty Warriors with a Zelda coat of paint and a few Zelda items, but it is basically Dynasty Warriors at its core, as compared to Age of Calamity, Age of Imprisonment, where it has much more of its own identity, and it feels a lot more Zelda-like as compared to this one. We did eventually play the definitive edition for the Switch, which we have as a different entry in here, because there's just different there's different scenarios, different characters, more stuff. It's kind of a combination of the Wii U and 3DS versions of the game. Lunacy for Saturn was one of our Saturn Return games. This one is the game where you're wandering around a town trying to escape. And it's very esoteric and weird. It's where you start the game in jail, and you have your buddy who's laying there lounging resplendently in jail, and you kind of just go from there. There's a lot of tricking people. There's a lot of making deals. Very weird game, and I am a little fascinated by it if I'm being super honest with you. Then after that, we have Mario Party 10 versus Shadow Generations, both of which we played a couple times. Mario Party 10 we first played in 2015 for both the D-Pad 4th anniversary, and like a month or two later when we hit 1,000 subscribers. We did that as our part of our 1,000 Subapalooza. We then also played it as part of the Ultimate Wii U 2 years ago. Sarah and I played just a regular-ass board because we realized when we covered it the other two times, we kept doing Bowser parties, which I do think are more fun, but Mario Party 10 does have its regular like Mario Party mode. Shadow Generations we played also twice in 1 year in 2025. We first played it for the Supersonic Let's Play, and then like immediately after, it wound up being kind of the framing device for that year's Sonic Weekathon, where we would play through the game, but we were not allowed to start a level until we played Shadow's entire campaign belonging to the same game. So after the opening level, we God, what was it? How did we do this? Because I think Sonic Adventure 2 wound up being a later on thing, or maybe that was right away. But so, before we could do the Sonic Heroes level, we went and played the Team Dark run of Sonic Heroes, as well as the final boss. We did the same thing for Shadow the Hedgehog. We went back and we played Shadow the Hedgehog. Oh, no, we didn't. No, did we not play Shadow the Hedgehog? Right, because the game doesn't have a Shadow the Hedgehog level. Not really. It sort of does for the Arc. But we kind of just did it like that, though. It got quicker to get through the non-Shadow Generation stuff in time because he's barely in... he has his own chunk of Sonic 06. He's got 3 levels in Sonic Forces, and he's not even present at all for Sonic Frontiers. So it was an interesting experiment. I kind of liked the idea of doing sort of a meta... Sonic Weekathon. That was kind of neat. All right, after that we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds versus Balatro. A Link Between Worlds was a brand new 3DS game when we first started playing it. We literally bought our recordable 3DS specifically for A Link Between Worlds, and we still have it 13 years later. It briefly broke, but it's alive again, and I used it literally last night to play Metroid Prime Hunters, to finish Metroid Prime Hunters. Balatro was for the Cursed Casino stream for Extra Life. I want to say Dave was piloting for that. Highly addictive game, really fun. He also wound up saying he had gone home and played a bunch of Balatro on his own later. It's a very effective little earworm of a game. This is kind of a weird one coming up next. We have Fallout 4 versus Breakdown. Fallout 4, shooty type game. Breakdown, shooty type game. Fallout 4 we did as a Let's Play. Breakdown was, I think, a 3-stream series from Dave. He actually borrowed the Xbox, which is sitting over there, in order to play it back in 2024. And Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about either of these, but there's not a ton of either of them, so I would recommend checking those out to make your decisions. Fallout 4 was the one where we named our guy Dustbin after Dustin. I'm just remembering that. After that, we have the original Shovel Knight versus Albert Odyssey, Legend of Eldian. Shovel Knight is definitely a game that needs no introduction. It is for sure one of the arbiters or harbingers or something. It is the thing that helped bring back or bring into the limelight for real for the first time indie developed games. It wasn't the first by any stretch, but it definitely was a very popular one. We have kind of covered it a couple different times now, but the original Shovel Knight we played once as a Let's Play back in 2014, a long time ago. It was the first time I had really started getting experimental with intros and outros, actually. And that has kind of blown up ever since, which is very interesting. Albert Odyssey Legend of Eldian was part of Saturn Return. It is a top-down adventure-y type game. You're trying to save your sister who's turned to stone. I think you get attacked by dudes and dragons at one point at the start of the game. You live in a treetop village. We only played so much of it, and we basically had to end when we started getting into the game. So, like, there's not a lot going on there, but one video for that, so it's very easy to browse if you're curious. And then the final game of this particular heat, we have Mega Man 4 for the Game Boy versus Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Mega Man 4 for the Game Boy, part of the Mega Let's Play. I think it's the first time in that series that they got the balance right. Mega Man 4 is a pretty solid game, and Mega Man 5 is in my opinion, actually quite great game on the Game Boy. But so Mega Man 4, we played that one just the one time. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, we played for the Ultimate Wii U. It is terrible. Pretty much exactly as expected. I had heard awful things about it for years. It bad. We only played it for like half an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, but we are going to be coming back to it eventually in the Supersonic Let's Play, so you can keep an eye out for that as well. And there you have it. That is our 64 matchups for this first heat. Whenever this video comes out, the deadline is going to be the following day at noon Eastern. If this comes out on Friday, Saturday at noon. If this comes out Saturday, Sunday at noon. I want to make sure that people see this and have a chance to actually get their votes in. It really should, if you're at least generally familiar with these, this will probably take you like 20-ish minutes, maybe 30. But, you know, if you have time this weekend and you've got a few that you're kind of like, I don't know, then, you know, spend some time browsing through, click around, see if there's something you like. The other 64 matchups for round one, which are part of this first web page that you can vote on, those will start voting when this voting one ends, and that'll run for 3 weeks. That'll run until the 5th of June, I want to say. I think that'll be when that one ends, and that one will be Friday, June 5th at noon Eastern is when that ends, and that's mostly because like I'm actually making sure you get the full or very nearly the full 3 weeks for that. This one we already had 1 week less because the trailer was taking so long in the explanation video. But yeah, head to challenge.com/grand_champion_1 to cast your votes for which games you think we've covered the best out of that set of 64 matchups, 128 games. And then we'll be into another 64 matchups after that. If you go down to the actual bracket, if you hover on any of the matches, there should be a little paperclip icon. And if you click on that, it'll show you. I've made itemized lists of all of the times we've played each of these games. So if you're not familiar with any of them, you can click on those and see what they were all about. I think that's going to be it for this. I hope you guys enjoy. I'm super looking forward to seeing who wins each of these. I think I'm going to do the results as percentages. I was debating doing individual votes for it, but I think percentages makes more sense. And yeah, we'll see who comes out on top. We'll see which 64 are defeated and which 64 move on to round 2, and they will be voted on again in October. It's going to be a while before we come back to these. So get voting, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.